James Cockerille, Global Strategic Lead at FutureBrand, located in New York City. I think the channels and the platforms are proliferating, so in terms of brand as identity, it's becoming a little bit more difficult to control the continuity and the cohesion and the coherency between the different channels that you might publish branded content on. I also think that the expectation of continuity is probably changing as well. So there's kind of a retraining happening, whereas we might have, with respect to branded content, focused on one or two key channels that we thought identified with the audience. Now we try to mix it up a little bit where, so we can actually have a little bit of vitality in where we are, not just what we are or what we're saying. Two ways that I think about brand would be how I define myself, more of like the objective definition of branding, and then there's the more subjective, which is how people experience you, and that's maybe the internal or external. And so when it comes to brand character, my biggest emphasis would be on who do I think I am, who do I think I should represent, what are all the ways that I can reinforce that, and then maybe the other part of character would be how do I come across? So what character is coming across to my audiences? And I think good brand management is overlapping those two as best as you can. So it is cohesive, it is integrated. There's still some areas of specialization in the agency world. You know, the people who are on the one hand defining brands in a more academic sense versus those who are actually bringing it to life through the various channels and various means of creating brand stories. So I would say that the difficulty or the differences are that you can hire really good storytellers, people with maybe more of a literary or a narrative bent, who aren't really as familiar with how those things have to land. Maybe the language is not succinct, or maybe the language isn't rich and full enough. Maybe the audience is more professional in one sense, and maybe the audience is a little bit more, I don't know, along for the ride, if you will, and wanting to be entertained. It's very hard to find writers who can actually focus or modulate according, to all those different audience types. But on the other hand, a lot of writing and brand creation is coming from people who aren't trained as writers. They kind of see themselves as writers, or they see themselves as storytellers, or they want to be good storytellers, but they're just never going to get there because they're so locked into probably more formal academic kind of frameworks, which is equally important if you're building a strategy, but maybe not as compelling if you're, I don't know, creating an ad or putting something on a blog. Maybe it doesn't feel as natural. I think you would want somebody who's comfortable in the abstract, somebody who can take the brand into parts unknown, if you will, and yet be close enough to what makes that brand relevant that they don't lose the audience or lose the purpose of the campaign or the initiative or the platform that you're trying to build. And you're probably looking for, I don't know, somebody who's got the right balance between strategic thinking and but then also a bit of a flair, a bit of an artistic bent. I guess there's a couple ways in. You could start with the brand strategy or whatever other organizing principle you use. It could be a creative platform, it could be a creative theme, it could be your global brand platform. That gives a little bit of continuity to the brainstorming. The other thing, it's pretty traditional, is to think about personas, think about who the heck is actually going to experience this, whether they're going to experience it more than once, whether you want them to or not. That kind of helps you hone on the appropriate type of content. And then probably the other thing, which is a bit more behavioral and organizational, is just get some different people in the mix, get some different people in the room. Some work that I've done recently uses themes and looking at the larger ecosystem that exists across channels to figure out what kind of messages or what kind of stories do we think we could transmit across that? Because if we can create more of a net effect and we can then decide, well, this is a little bit low tech, that's a little bit more polished, you end up creating something a little bit more authentic. You also allow people to enter that content in different ways. You know, not everybody wants to see it on a movie screen. Sometimes people want to interact with it a little bit, and I think the more that people can involve themselves in the content, the more they can internalize it and make it their own. And then that gets you the social amplification part of it.